Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Artistically Black. We have a special episode for you today. It's Mother's Day. I am so excited for you to join us today for Mother's Day. We have a wonderful show for you. We are going to continue exploring the expansiveness of the Black community, the love and labor of art, and the connection between the two. I am, as always, your host, Dannielle Hutchinson, and I'm so delighted for you to join us today. Today, I am honored to be joined by two incredible artists and women. My first guest today has been on a show with us previously, so I'm excited to welcome her back. She is the founder and executive director of InkPen, which is a collaboration between readers and writers, putting books in the hands of teens in underserved school libraries to ensure readers of color have access to stories by writers of color. Please welcome Darlene Taylor. Hello.
Hi, Dannielle. It's wonderful to see you again.
I'm so excited to have you back. It's been too long. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I can hear you. There's a little noise outside the window for a second.
Awesome.
But yes, it's wonderful to be back with you. I hope everybody's doing well.
Everyone is doing well. I'm glad to have you back. It's been too long. We've got to do this. We got to shorten the time next time. All right. Well, I mean, you have some wonderful news. You've just been recently. You were named the inaugural Amina Brenda Lynn Robinson Writer in Residency for the Columbus Museum of Art, and that's in Ohio, right?
Yes, Columbus, Ohio. That's where the house is in the museum. Yes.
And so you brought a book that you want to share a little bit from. You just want to share a bit of a reading from, and then we'll talk about that experience and about the book, right?
Sure. Yes.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So as the Amina Robinson Writer in Residence, it's an opportunity for me to be my writing self. Mm-hmm. And that is take time over the summer to work on a project. And one of the projects that I decided to work on was a prose poem that I wrote, and it was published in Feminist Studies, and it's called Blood on a Blackberry. And it's a story of girlhood and that the transition along roads, the joys along those roads, the sorrows, the hopes that grandmothers and mothers and that community of family around us have for us. And so I wrote about that in my application, and I'm delighted to have been selected as the inaugural writer in residence. Amina Robinson was a textile artist, a painter, a sculptor, and also a writer of children's books. And this particular book, A Street Called Home, I thought was especially meaningful right now because in this time of reflection, and as you say, also as we're looking at Mother's Day, connected in here are memories. So what are the memories that we have of home? And so I'm going to just open up my pages here and share a little bit of the book with you. And this is written by Amina Robinson, and this is her artwork as well. At the turn of the century, African Americans came up from the South looking for a better life. And some of them settled in a shanty town called the Blackberry Patch in Columbus, Ohio. My grandmother and grandfather came, and their sisters and brothers. They were all part of this northward migration. The day came when the shacks in the Blackberry Patch were torn down to set up Poindexter Village, the third metropolitan housing authority development in the United States. It was named for the Reverend James Preston Poindexter, who lived from 1819 to 1907. The first families moved into Poindexter Village in the spring of 1940, and many of the mothers and fathers of those families had grown up in the Blackberry Patch. Now they'd come to raise their families in Poindexter Village. My parents were among those first families, and they walked with everybody else up and down Mount Vernon Avenue. That was a self-sufficient street. It knew how to survive. People wove in and out with their horses and carts and trucks. You could hear the street cries. People bartered and bought and sold. People played and danced. Everything you could need, you could find on Mount Vernon Avenue. The rooftops of Poindexter Village are as crowded with pigeons as the street is with people. The people are the traffic. It's hard to see everything going on at the same time. There's the drugstores, the shoe shops, the beauty parlors, the schools, the churches, the theaters and hotels, the open air markets, the nightclubs and musicians, the newspapers and restaurants. They're all part of this street called home. And I just thought that connected beautifully with our journeys. When I think of my own home, those memories began on Webster Street. And Webster Street also was a world of song and people walking, people watching, people caring for each other, of books. And I felt that wonderful connection here inside this story.
That's
I wanted to
awesome.
share it with you. So thank you.
That's beautiful. And so within this book, tell us what are the other things we can expect inside this book? Because it's also a very unique the way that the book is set up as well.
Yes, it's shaped like an accordion. So, as you saw from the images that were shared earlier, each page has, if I can share this with you, each page has these wonderful reflections of Amina Robinson's work. But also, when you open it up, inside is a story. Inside here is the story of the vegetable man. Next to the vegetable man is the sock man, and it goes through. But also, it pulls out like an accordion, and underneath, are the vibrant pictures of this place that she called home. And I'm sure each of us has these images of home, pictures that are in photo albums. Maybe for those of us who may have sketched or drawn, we have notebooks and scrapbooks of that work that we did early on that continues to connect us with home.
Yeah, I mean, these are the type of stories that really help you to preserve memories,
Yes.
to stay close to home, so to speak. It reminds me of Trisha's latest book, Dream Street, because it's very much about, revisiting those places that are in your past, the places that you hold so dear to you. And then I know that briefly in talking about and setting this up, it was talked about of mapping histories. And can you tell us what that means and why is that important?
Mapping histories so we don't forget, so we don't forget the past, and we don't let other people tell us that there's a past that was not there. We have to remember our stories for ourselves, for our children, and honor the people whose shoulders that we stand on. They lived, they spoke, they survived, and they handed that to us. We don't want to forget those gifts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that book. Is this a book that we can look for in our local bookstores? Are we able to get our hands on this book somewhere?
So to get your hands on the book, you can reach out to your local library. You could reach out to the Columbus Museum of Art. And you could also look for it coming up in the future in another venue.
Okay. That sounds like a secret. So that we'll have to explore.
Something to hear more about later.
Excellent. Okay, so Davinia, make a note. We have to have Darlene back so we can know more about this new venue. Can you tell me what is your experience like right now as a writer of residency for the Columbus Museum? Like, what things are you doing? What are you working on right now?
So mostly I spent my first week getting to know the community. And so reading Amina Robinson's works has been very important for that because she has mapped the history of a community and a community that's been raised does not exist anymore. And it's just amazing the way she used paper, vellum, cloth to shape that texture and color of that communities. You can feel it inside of her works. And some of her works are absolutely massive, several stories high, but they tell a story of the people here in this community, but also she's telling a story of Americans and America and our journeys. That mapping history, that reflection, that thinking about where we come from and just maintaining that connection. So I think that as we read this story and others, and that's what I'm looking to do in my own work as I look to build out my Blood on a Blackberry story, thinking about what are the stories that I heard from my mothers, from my aunts, from my uncle, from my dad, as we sat on porches and I sat quietly, but I listened and I was
Mm-hmm.
making notes. And it's interesting how those memories just come back to me now. So as I sit in the quiet, mostly what I've been doing is looking at the work that I've done and really just reflecting on place, reflecting on my childhood imagination, and in the vibrant colors that are around me when I'm in Amina's home, also just thinking and reflecting about what that meant for me. The blue skies of Richmond, Virginia, the
Mm.
green grass, the corn in my grandmother's backyard, and bringing that corn home. Those were just wonderful moments that are, they're about food, they're about connection, they're about community, they're about family, they're about faith, they're about song, about tradition. So that's what I've been not wrestling with, but just thinking through and sitting with in a very beautiful, beautiful way.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like an artist's paradise, an experience to have to just be able to just fully immerse yourself in the art. And we would love to have you back to continue the conversation about Blood on a Blackberry. And that was great. Now, before I let you go, I want, because it is Mother's Day, I would like to ask you, what, if any, influence has your mother had on your life as an artist?
You know, as I think about the questions that drew me to write Blood on a Blackberry, um, it started with a recipe. It started with my mother's recipe for blackberry cobbler. And that recipe extends to my cousins and I going out to blackberry patches with white buckets and collecting
Mhm.
and trying to be careful of thorns, trying to be careful of if there's snakes in the pit, and also walking very carefully along very lonely, lonely, deserted roads, but having our voices calling out and knowing that if I yelled, if I needed help, my mother would be there.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for bringing Amina's book to our audience. I appreciate you coming back and having a chat with me, and I look to forward to seeing all of the other things that you have to share with us as an artist, and to continue this conversation about storytelling and narratives and preserving histories. I want to bring out our next guest, and I'll see you at the end. And she is the Senior Vice President of Animation and Mixed Media at the Jim Henson Company and the founder of the Clifton House. The Emmy nominated producer. I had to make sure I put that part in there. Please welcome Sidney Clifton. Sidney, thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank,
much for joining us.
thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I
I am
really enjoyed the conversation with Darlene. My
I,
goodness.
I'm gonna have to go out and I'm gonna have to get that book and I'm gonna have to add it to my collection.
Same.
Because Darlene always brings amazing suggestions of books and artists and authors. So my collection keeps growing. So I'm excited every time. The bookstores have all of my money. Now, when I told someone that you were going to appear on our show here, they asked me to ask you a very special question that I told them had nothing to do with this show, but I said I'd ask it anyway. And they're
Okay.
just interested and want to know, because of the Jim Henson of it all, is there going to be a second season of The Dark Crystal?
Oh, I appreciate the question. At this time, there is no discussion of a second season quite yet.
And
As
all
I
the
always say,
people
it ain't over till it's over, but there's no discussion at this time.
and all the children wept. Okay. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging that question. But that is not what we are here to discuss. I first want to congratulate you on being appointed the Senior VP of Animation and Mixed Media at Jim Henson Company. That is amazing. What are the things that you are doing in that position? What's under your purview?
Essentially, without sort of disclosing anything confidential,
Mhm.
I'm vetting, so looking for, overseeing the production of and developing animated and mixed media content for the Jim Henson Company. So that means anything from short form through episodic for TV and streamers, or long form for cable and streamers. Anything from 2D to 3D to stop motion to puppetry and live action. So all kinds of formats of storytelling. And I'm also what I call demographic agnostic. So that means I can vet and develop preschool, kids 6 to 11, between adult and prime time. And we're doing all of those things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we are here to talk about a very special book that your mother, Lucille Clifton, wrote in
Yes.
1986, or
Mhm.
published in 1986,
Correct.
called The Lucky Stone. And I read this book, and I'll let you tell the audience what the book is about. But could you share just a little bit of that book with us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. And The Lucky Stone is essentially, the story is a through line of a family's relationship with a stone that is lucky for people in basically the matrilineal line, and the story of why this stone is lucky for all these generations of women. What is interesting to me, especially thinking about Mother's Day and mothers and daughters and storytelling and all that, is that this is a story about storytelling. And I'll demonstrate that just in the first couple of paragraphs. It opens with with an adult telling a story when she was a child, asking her great grandmother for stories, and starts like this. When I was a girl, we lived all together in a house with a big wraparound porch. Me, my mama and daddy, and my great grandmother, Mrs. Elsie F. Pickens. The F stood for free. She was about 70 some years old, my great grand. We used to sit out on that porch in good weather, and she would tell me stories about when she was a girl and all the different things that used to happen and such as that. Oh, I loved it so. I loved her so. T, she would call me, sweet baby T. Some of my favorite stories were her favorites too. Oh, how we both loved telling and hearing about the lucky stone. On a hot June morning, T and her great grandmother were sitting on the porch in the sun. T had plumped the cushions in the rocker and helped her great grandmother get comfortable and park her stick. Then she sat on the first step right by the rocker and smiled. Tell me a story, Grandma. And that smile was all Mrs. Pickens needed. That smile you got remind me of a lady, her great grandmother began. Remind me of a lady long, long, long time ago. This lady was named Vashti, and she lived with her mama right down the road from me and mine. Her and her mama used to sit out in the summertime on their front porch, just rocking like this and smiling just like you, so pretty and polite. But we was all scared of them because they had real long fingernails on their fingers and long toenails on their toes. They never did say nothing to us or one another till one day me and my friends was passing by them soft like. They was smiling and rocking on their porch, and the one Vashti leaned across the railing and whispered right to me, Girl, bring me a glass of cool water. I'll give you a lucky stone. And that is how the storytelling is launched through the rest of the book, which is essentially a series of smaller stories about why this stone was lucky and how it got passed on from one family member to the next. And in the end, it's passed to sweet baby T, who then is taking it to her, theoretically, to her daughters, granddaughters, etc. And it's just a manner of thinking about ways, almost like talismans for storytelling. What is how we tell stories, and what are oral traditions, how they show up in our communities.
Yeah, I mean, that's great because that's so important for us to, especially I feel like for us in the Black community to preserve that oral tradition of storytelling because that is where a lot of our history is. That's how we keep the true stories alive, the things that are not written in books, the things you're not going to find stored away somewhere. It's stored in us. And I
Yes.
really think that that's always something really special about the Black community. What was your mother's inspiration for writing this piece?
I think it's doing exactly what you described, which is reminding us of the value of storytelling, but also in listening to our elders and in taking their wisdom, sometimes which is full of facts and data, and sometimes which is not. Sometimes which is about, here's the way something felt. Excuse me. This is the way this information got from one person to the next. This is why this experience is important and why it's to be paid attention to. And so I think myself and my siblings always grew up with a great respect for oral traditions and storytelling, even when, as my mother described and stated in her memoir, Generations, sometimes, the facts don't remain, but the feelings and truth do. And so she said that, sometimes, and she quoted her father saying this, that in our stories, in our histories, in our families, even the lies are true, which is very interesting to think about when we sort of ponder and reflect on what our families have meant to us, what our families have experienced, what our families have triumphed over, etc. So it was just underscoring that.
What is your favorite or first piece written by your mom?
Oh my goodness. It kind of, I have so many favorites, and it really depends on it's very mood contingent, I have to admit. Her first book, Good Times, was published in 1969, her first book of poems, but I recognize that she was writing before that. So there were she'd written articles for what was then called the Negro Digest, and there was an article back then that I remember that I was very fond of. It was essentially sort of a story of a Black woman, what we can now call code switching, but the article was called What She Would Have Said, which is about a story of a Black woman who was with a group of mostly white colleagues, and her responses in her conversation and what she would have said had she been in her home with others.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down.
I loved that article. That was before Good Times, but I also constantly go back to Generations, her memoir, and also a book called Good Woman, which was Generations and poems. The stories of our family tend to resonate with me constantly. Her poems about her mom, herself, her daughters, and it's less about the words than I think the messaging and the truth behind them for me. So, for example, in her poem, Won't You Celebrate With Me? The triumph of almost whatever comes at me, I continue to rise, I continue to overcome, I keep going. And I think those sentiments that sort of go through all really speak to me in a really meaningful way.
That's amazing. What influence has your mother's art had on your career?
I would say my career is different from hers, though it is still creative. Essentially, as a producer, at the end of the day, I am and support storytellers, so that's really important to me. Still, as a writer, I try to remain honest, and I think her because she considered being a poet a way of being and not a doing. It's a being. So I think that my intention is that I walk into a room honestly, paying attention, making space for others, and trying to be really authentic and clear about what it is I see, what I want, and what I want to convey. And that's what her work did. So it's about walk into a room the way that she did through her art.
That's excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about Clifton House?
Sure. And I'll tell you a bit of the sort of the genesis of it. My family moved to Baltimore in 1967, and in 1969, my mother's first book was published. So myself, my parents, and my 5 siblings at the time moved to Baltimore in this great big house in the area called Windsor Hills in Northwest Baltimore. And it was just felt like a creative sanctuary for, people of color, but also artists and activists and people whose lives and intentions and talents and experiences sort of intersected in that way. Because my dad was also an activist, but a painter and a sculptor. My dad actually painted this painting that's right behind me. My mother's, again, her career sort of burgeoned in that house. My parents lost the house to foreclosure in 1980. It stayed with the owners after that for 40 years. My father passed away in 1984. My mother passed away in 2010 on February 13th, which was the anniversary of her mother's passing. On February 13th, 2019, I woke up with the instinct to reach out to the owner of the house just to check the status of it. She told me that the house went on the market that day. I felt that was a sign of some sort. So essentially, through jumping through many hurdles and many conversations, I bought the house. And for me, it was multiple things. It was a reclamation of the space that my parents had lost. So I felt very sort of triumphant in having the house back. And my initial thought was that when I visited Baltimore, which I do, a couple times per year, I have my place to stay. I have my family home. And I thought, like, well, we'll do the common thing, have a place, Airbnb it, do all the stuff. Then I started thinking about what the house was for us and what it still felt called to be, which was this sanctuary for emerging writers, poets, and artists. And I came up with this idea to create the Clifton House. So we're now converting the house. There's not much conversion to be done, but we're now using the house as this space for artist, poet, and writer workshops that are low to no cost, that are training up emerging artists in their craft, but also in the art of living that life. Because I also, in my role as a producer, or in my career, I've been a producer, but I've also been a recruiter, and I've spoken at primarily art schools all over North America, and find that artists, writers, young people really want to know how to live this life. What does it entail? So at the Clifton House, we will offer not only craft workshops and learnings and networking and resources, but we'll offer workshops on how to take care of mental health, how to file your taxes on time, how to manage your money, how to have the life, how to be successful in the business of being an artist as well. And that just feels like not only continuing the legacy of my mother's work, which we are blessed to be able to do, but also feels like an appropriate give back, which is important to me as an artist and a woman of color. While we're here, my parents always taught all of us to leave the place better than you found it. And that's, in my small way, we intend to do that.
On behalf of the artists, I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you in advance. Are we able to, is the Clifton House ready and open for artists yet? Do you have a launch date if not?
It is not completely ready and open for artists yet, although we have had a couple of in-person slam poetry workshops. We've had hybrid workshops and we've had virtual workshops. So I think the best way to probably find that information is to go on our website, which is www.thecliftonhouse.co, not .com.co. There you'll see sort of upcoming events. You'll see some past events. There's a virtual tour of the space, so you can sort of see where it is in Baltimore. And there's a place where people can sign up for newsletters and updates and such. We're thinking about having some kind of soft launch in Q3 of this year. There's some renovations in progress, so the full house is not available, but certainly the first floor will be ready soon. And my mom's birthday is June 27th, so we're trying to be able to do something around that time this year. So we'll just keep fingers crossed that
let's keep those fingers crossed.
Yes,
and we'll reconnect.
Oh yes. Oh, yes.
Maybe it will come out to Baltimore. We'll take the show on the road.
See.
Listen, I like to travel, and it's not that far from here. It's right up 495.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing your mom's story and her book and continuing the legacy for artists and everything that you're doing for the culture for Black women. Thank you so very much. I want to bring Darlene back out. We're gonna close here. Thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful conversation. Two wonderful conversations. You are more than welcome back here anytime. Please just let me know, and we will put it on the calendar. We could talk about anything. It doesn't even have to be about books. I could just sit and listen to the both of you just talk about just your life experience and just how you came to be where you are.
Dannielle, can I add just one thing that
absolutely,
and that is I am excited to also be a board member of the Clifton House and to share with Sidney this journey of storytelling, preserving legacy, and again, that holding on to stories that mothers share with their daughters and taking it forward. You know, as a little girl, we're in May, and then Memorial Day comes up, and you know, for our family, it was always load in the car. We had shovels. We would go to the family graves and we would tend to those graves. We would care for the elders who weren't there anymore by respecting the ground. And for that, I love and cherish the idea of the Clifton House, the Amina Robinson House, because these homes are holding us together, and they're holding us and keeping us together in our stories. So thank you, Sidney, for your vision to do that. And thank you, Dannielle, for having us and letting us share. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that part, because that is important to even when people transition on to continue to take care of them in that way. That was beautiful. I'm gonna keep it together. But thank you so much. Thank you, Sidney. Thank you, Darlene. This was great. And speaking of May, it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Happy Mother's Day to you. I want to send a special Happy Mother's Day to my mother, who inspires me every day, Carolyn Hutchinson. I'm just going to name drop that. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your love, and your grace. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. What else do I want to say here? All right. As we close out, registration for our summer camps are open now. We have a camp in Rockville for grades 6 through 12. We have a camp for our rising 1st through 6th graders in Glen Echo. Slots are filling up. So if you are interested in looking for summer camp, check out our website. Fantastigirl and the Math Monster starts performances on June 17th. Tickets are on sale now. Check out our website. We would love to see you come help Fantastigirl fight that math monster. And finally, if you would like to make a donation to Adventure Theater, please visit our website at atmtc.org. No donation is too big or too small. Again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. However you identify, whatever makes you a mother, and those who are with us, those who have transitioned on, happy Mother's Day to everyone. This has been Artistically Black. Stay artistic, stay Black, and we will see you next time. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day.